So this topic is now regarding fraud and responsibilities of auditor. This is nothing but we are discussing SA 240 standard. SA 240 standard. The standard heading is auditor responsibilities relating to fraud in an audit of financial statements. What are all the auditor's responsibilities relating to fraud? They are not saying auditor is responsible for fraud. The statement is what the standard heading, if you look at the responsibilities of auditor relating to fraud in an audit of financial statements. What are his responsibilities is what covering under this standard. First of all, tell me everyone, what is the responsibility of the auditor primarily? The auditor is only responsible to give opinion whether the financial statements are true and fair view. Yes or no? Whether the financial statements are free from material misstatements. Getting it? The responsibility for auditor is whether the financials as a whole are free from MMS. First of all, primary responsibility for prevention of fraud is with management, those charged with the governance. What the standard says, SA 240. SA 240 says, auditor shall maintain skepticism throughout the audit. It says, don't believe straight away everything given by company records, everything. We question it. Question it. Critically evaluate it. Critical assessment, we call it as. There is a concept called skepticism, no? What is professional skepticism? Professional skepticism is an attitude of questioning mind and critical assessment of audit evidence. Yes or no? Being alert for situations of possible fraud. Being alert in case evidence conflicts with another evidence. So professional skepticism is required to reduce the risk of overlooking or risk of overgeneralizing. Have you seen these words? So risk of overlooking means what? Suppose I visited a factory and I found so many employees wearing different color uniforms. If I don't look at them carefully, will I figure out? If I don't observe that and just moved on, that's called overlooking. Overgeneralizing. Overgeneralizing means don't apply one principle to other principles. At one control, company is operating well. Don't apply that everywhere else is also they are doing the same. Production department is working very proper. They are following all the rules and regulations, controls. Don't generalize that to sales. Don't generalize that to so and so place. Alert everywhere. Able to understand? Maintain that skepticism everywhere. Don't overgeneralize. That's what the meaning. Able to understand? Now remember, you need to keep in mind the risk of not detecting a fraud is higher than risk of not detecting an error. Further, fraud, no, it may be sophisticatedly carried out. Getting it? And they were concealing it so cleverly, it is more difficult for you to detect if at all it was involved by collusion. And identifying management fraud is greater than identifying employee fraud. Not identifying management fraud is greater risk than employee fraud, because management is generally in a better position to manipulate records. They stole some inventory and in the books of accounts also they passed as dummy sale entry. Book balance of inventory, physical balance of inventory, both will match. You will not get a doubt. When do we get a doubt on inventory? When we counted physically and when we find a shortage. When will you say it is shortage? In the records it shows 1000 units. Here it shows 950. So there is a shortage, so I got a doubt. But records and physical both are matching. Will I get a query? Will I get a doubt? No. Now whether auditor will detect a fraud. How far an auditor detect a fraud? So you see, is auditor responsible for detection of fraud means this standard is not saying anything like that. What are they saying? Auditor is responsible for giving opinion. He is responsible to maintain skepticism. Management fraud is difficult to identify than employee fraud. Fraud itself is difficult to identify compared to error, especially when it involves collusion, all that. Management is primarily responsible for preventing, detecting frauds. Finally, whether auditor can detect or not, it depends upon the perpetrator's skillfulness. Who committed the fraud? How far he is skillful? How much collusion involved? What is the size of the amount? Experience of the person? Frequency. If the fraud is committed more frequently, it can be easily discovered. Tell me, if out of 10,000 transactions, 100 transactions fraud, 1%, the probability to discover them is 1%. Suppose if out of 10,000 transactions, only 10 transactions were fraud, the probability to discover is 0.1%. Simple probability, mathematical equation. Getting it? So, especially in judgmental areas, wherever management judgments, especially accounting estimates, in that whether any fraud happened or not, it is extremely difficult for auditor. Getting it? Suppose if a mission useful life actually is 7 years, but management intentionally used it, recognized as 5 years. Who knows? Especially frauds relating to management judgments, estimates. Who knows? We can't even identify evidence for that. So, auditor has to be careful in evaluating every aspect. Now, is auditor liable if at all any fraud was discovered later? He gave unqualified opinion, he went off. Later some big fraud was discovered. Is auditor accountable? It will exist. He is accountable only when that failure is clearly due to not exercising reasonable skill and care. Only when auditor is not properly exercising skill and care, then only he is responsible. So after completion, if a fraud was detected, that itself cannot mean that auditor did not perform the duty properly. If auditor can prove with the help of working papers, then he cannot be held responsible, like he has conducted audit in proper manner. I did my due diligence. I applied sampling properly, scientifically. Everything I followed correctly. Still I could not discover. What can I do? Able to understand? If I am able to prove, that's why documentation is important. So this is what the standard actually starts with, SA 240. Now we need to understand what is fraud, what is various types of frauds that are discussed in this chapter. What are various types of frauds? What is a fraud? First of all, it's an intentional act. Yes or no? Committed by individuals. Maybe management, top management, employees, or third parties. Getting it? To get some unjust or illegal advantage. To get some advantage they do. Yes or no? Now, remember, the word fraud is a very big concept. Criminal Code procedure, Indian Penal Code, the word fraud has a different meaning. Companies Act section 447, the fraud has a different meaning. But in the audit, what is fraud meaning as per SA 240? Because of that activity, because of the fraud, there is a material misstatement in the financial statement. We are only concerned about which types of frauds? Those types of frauds which causes a material misstatement in financial statements. Suppose management gave a fraudulent report while they are going to start one big company at one forest area. Now there they need to give a environmental some report, some certification they need to give. There they manipulated the certificate, figures, everything. Let this particular company establishing there do not danger, do not damage that environment. Like that we got fraudulently some certificate from the authorities and submitted to the government and got the license. Is this type of fraud auditor concerned with? Will it affect any material misstatement in the financial statements? These are civil frauds. These are purely administrative frauds, operations related frauds. We are not concerned about that kind of fraud. But look, if you come across that kind of fraud, if you came across that kind of fraud, you have to report if you have came across. But is there any responsibility for you to discover such a kind of fraud? We are concerned only with those types of frauds which causes material misstatements in the financial statements. Understood or not? Next. Now, the standard divides the frauds into two types. Financial reporting fraud, misappropriation of assets. Because of these two, a material misstatement will arise in the balance sheet or P&L. Suppose some goods were theft, stolen. Inventory. When goods were stolen by some third party from the warehouse, physical goods balance will show lesser balance. But in the records, we have not recorded the theft. So book balance will show higher value. The same balance will go to the balance sheet, right? In the balance sheet, it is showing inventory value 10 crore, but in go down, it is only 9.5 crore physically there. Now, is balance sheet overstated or not? So, because somebody misappropriated, balance sheet got overstated. Able to understand? Or fraud may be fraudulent financial reporting. It is also called as manipulation of accounting records. It is also called as manipulation of accounts or manipulation of records. Company intentionally manipulated the records. Sometimes both together might happen. The company CEO himself, arranged some thieves and stole so much of inventory. And later, the companies which are having big, higher position, they need not do all this, higher people management. Suppose CEO, I'm a CEO in a company. I approved one vendor. I approved one, customer. I told my marketing people and my sales team that they are very good people. You can sell the goods on credit. Our company built the goods on credit for 1 crore. Getting it? And goods were sold to him. Later he is not paying. I only treat it as bad debt. I'm just a CEO, not a shareholder of the company, not a director of the company. I'm not having an ownership in the company. I'm getting salary from this company and I can do these kinds of frauds, yes or no? Are you getting the point? Suppose this company want to purchase so much of raw material every month, every year. So much of raw material. From whom we have to purchase? I will finalize the vendor. I will finalize the vendor. Actually, this vendor is ready to sell the goods at 100 rupees per unit. But I will tell him, don't sell at 100. Charge 150. Okay. I am the one who will approve the contract here. I will approve. And you will get 150 per unit. During the year, 150 crore worth of purchases we made. And the entire 150 crore was paid by the company. I'm the CEO. I am the one who approved the vendor. I'll ask him, pay me 20 crore commission, you keep 30 crore commission. He'll pay me 20 crore in the back end. These are called kickbacks. Able to understand? These kinds of frauds happen. So these are all misappropriation of assets. Unauthorized usage of entities' assets. Unauthorized approvals. Are you getting it? Overriding the controls. This is actually what? Overriding the control. The control which I have. Shareholders out of trust gave me a control that I should authorize every vendor. But I am misusing it. I am abusing my control. Able to understand? Remember, fraud is intentional. Fraud is intentional. That's it. Now, why people do fraud? Why management or employee or third party, why they do fraud? There are 3 factors. It's not even factors. There are 3 cumulative reasons. People do fraud because they're having some pressure. Suppose a person is stealing goods. He's having some financial obligation. He's having some personal financial obligation. And that created a pressure in his mind. Okay, dude, it's okay. Everyone are doing today. So his attitude is being rationalized. Getting, since everyone are doing, he's also doing. Rationalization of the attitude. Because of the pressure and because of the attitude. Only these 2 are not sufficient. We need an opportunity. Yes or no? We need an opportunity. For a bank cashier, if at all he's under severe financial pressure, if at all his attitude supports, he's having large amount of cash access every day. Because he's the one who is accessing cash. He's having opportunity, yes or no? Can he easily do the fraud or not? Only if these 3 present, there must be a need for you, obviously. Your attitude should support, and you must have an opportunity to commit a fraud. Opportunity means what? Way. You need to find a way to do a fraud. All these 3 met, fraud will happen. Are you getting the point? Now what auditor has to identify here? I need to check in the company whether any of the top management, are they under pressures? Now these pressures, for doing manipulation of records, the pressures are different. For manipulating assets, the pressures are different. Suppose I have personal need. In my family I have some financial trouble. I'll steal cash. I'll try to get some benefit from the company. But here I don't have such kind of problem. I'm having competition issue. My company performance is shown very poor. But outside public are scolding like anything. Shareholders are like, pressurizing me like anything. That the company is not performing well. And moreover, I want to go for public issue next year. What I'll do here? Fraud. Which type of fraud I'll do here? Will I steal cash and all? What I'll do? I'll manipulate records. I will manipulate accounting records. So, the risk factors that create pressure to commit fraudulent financial reporting, the risk factors are different when compared with misappropriation of assets. So the opportunities for misappropriation of asset, the opportunity for fraudulent financial reporting, pressures for misappropriation and fraudulent financial reporting, rationalization or attitude for fraudulent financial reporting or misappropriation, all these three factors are different. Able to understand? All of you. So pressures, what are they? Fraudulent financial reporting occurs because when the management is under pressure to achieve earnings target. Opportunity, when an individual believes internal control can be overridden. I'm a CEO and I was given the control, I can override. Some individuals may be rationalized committing a fraudulent act. They possess an attitude, they possess a character, they possess some kind of values that allow them knowingly, intentionally to commit dishonest act. Next. How fraudulent financial reporting is committed? Why it is committed and how it is committed? Why it is committed, we have seen general reasons. Now, why fraudulent financial reporting is committed? Why? This type of fraud is generally committed for various reasons. Like avoiding payment of taxes. They have given some, silly reasons, but we need to write the same reason in exam also. Because suggested answer contain the same reason. The person valuing the paper will not have this much idea. If you write your own answer, he will not have an idea that it is your own answer. Getting it? Declaring dividend when there are no profits. Company want to declare dividend, but there are no profits. So company will show higher profits and declare dividend. That's the interpretation. Next, withholding dividend even there are enough profits. I have so much of profits, but I don't want to declare dividend. That time also I'll do fraud. And for receiving higher remuneration, especially when the remuneration is as a percentage of profit. I'm a director, I was promised to pay remuneration as a percentage of profit. So naturally, I assume I want profits to be higher. So I'll get more remuneration. How they do fraud? In what way they do fraud? I will inflate purchases, expenses. I will inflate purchases, expenses to show reduced profit. Or I will suppress purchases and expenses to show higher profits. I will omit outstanding liabilities, prepaid expenses depending upon the need. I will charge capital expenditure to revenue or revenue to capital. Intentionally I do all this. I will intentionally omit important transactions and events. Or I do apply wrong accounting principles, wrong accounting policies. I take wrong accounting estimates. Able to understand? Now, this fourth point can be asked as a straight question. Fraudulent financial reporting often involves management's override of controls and can be committed by using various techniques. What are they? They'll ask you this question. You need to write the below points. Fictitious entries they'll record, especially at the end of the year. And they are changing judgments, accounting estimates and all they will change. How fraudulent financial reporting will be performed by management. Accounting estimates they'll do frauds. Journal entries fictitious they'll pass. Or they omit recording some transaction. They will postpone recording. They will record now itself. Some transaction of next year they will record now. Advancing. Delaying. Current year transaction they'll record in next year. Conceal. Not disclosing facts. Okay, they'll conceal some information. Contingent liabilities they'll conceal. Contingent liabilities they'll not disclose. Complex transactions they will enter into to misrepresent the position. Like suppose I don't have sales in this year, but if I go with that kind of profit and loss account with lesser sales, people may not invest in my company properly. or I will not get loans. What I will do? I will create 2 subsidiary companies. Getting it? I will sell to one subsidiary company. They will sell to another subsidiary company. And that company will sell me after 31st March. Before 31st March, I will sell to one subsidiary. They will sell to another subsidiary. They will sell me back again after 31st March. But as on 31st March, I have sales, no. Are you getting the point? Huge volume of sales. Next year again, I purchased back. Or they will return me the goods after 31st March. I will sell them goods on 30th March. Lorry will go. Goods will be dispatched. Goods will be delivered. I'll have 15 to 20 days credit period, or 1 month credit period, or 3 months credit period, something, some condition I'll put. After 2-3 months, they'll return me the goods. Able to understand? So for this year, my objective is fulfilled. Last year, my income was high. Profits was high. I'll go for a bank loan, get huge amount of loan. Later, sales were returned. Business was no more. I will abscond from India. Getting the point? No, this is not happening only in India. Across everywhere else, this is how it happens. Getting it? People think in India, the crime rate is high. No, India's crime rate is very low compared to many other developed countries. Many developed countries, the crime rate is extremely high. You can see crime rate, you can just Google it. Having highest crime rate countries. India will not be there in the top 5 or top 6 also. Somewhere later. Getting it? So across many other countries, the crime rate is higher, and that too in the developed countries. Getting it? There is a saying, in United States and all, people are worried to travel after 8 o'clock. Because everyone carries gun there. Getting it? The petrol bunk and all, a person will come and show gun and take cash and go. This is very common in US. Many countries it is, developed countries it is common. Too much of freedom is also danger. What induces management employees to commit fraud? What makes people commit fraud? Financial obligations. Management's unrealistic goals. Management is pressurizing me that I am not achieving sales target. So what I did? I created a dummy sale. Next, dissatisfied employee. Employee was not satisfied. He may do a fraud in the company because he is having grudge over the company. Name game, like management using power by asking employees to do something illegal. Opportunity to commit a fraud. Because of all these reasons why we do fraud. Sometimes I may not have pressure, I may not have intention, but that opportunity creates me a pressure. That creates me an incentive. Getting it? Next, what is misappropriation? It's nothing but theft. Yes or no? Generally it happens in small amounts. Theft of assets and all happens in small amounts. Almost all IT company employees and all will be doing this kinds of frauds every day. All IT employees. They go to TCS, Wipro, Infosys. They'll give pencils, notebooks free of cost. They'll bring home and his children are using it for homework. You know that? Next. So misappropriation of assets, no. They can be in many ways. What are they? Receipts. I can do a fraud in receipts. Or I will steal physical assets. Or some intangible assets. Or I will make the entity to pay for goods and services not received by the organization. Dummy sales. Or I will use entity asset for personal use. And remember, misappropriation of asset accompanied by misleading records is even more difficult. If inventory was shortage, I can easily discover by comparing with records. But if records are also simultaneously manipulated, how can I discuss? How can I discover? Are you getting the point? You see, this is what happened in scam 1992. Have you seen scam 1992? In that, he will do 500 crore bank fraud. The person who assisted him, the person, temporarily in order to hide, he will go and manipulate the record also. In the back end, he will go and manipulate the number also. Getting it? So, it is very difficult for them to discover. Getting it? Now, misappropriation of goods is more or less same. Getting this you read, you will understand very easily. Now, defalcation of cash. In cash, what kind of fraud we can do? I can do cash fraud through payments, like fictitious vouchers or inflated vouchers. I can do fraud in wages. I can do teaming and ladding fraud. Teaming and ladding, I think you might have understood already. Getting it? I receive from one customer. I use it for my personal purpose. When company is asking me, have you collected Mr. Recovery Agent? I will say, yes sir, I am collecting tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll collect from another and I will say from person 1 I collected and then give it to the company. From person 3 whatever I collected I will allocate to person 2. Person 4 I will allocate to person 3. This is called teaming and ladding. So unauthorized or fictitious rebates or discounts. Unauthorized, fictitious rebates or discounts. Like I'm giving fictitious rebates, nothing but like suppose customer paid me. These are all happens in olden days when the transactions are dealt in cash. When the owners are actually away. I am the manager of the company and I am the one who managing the entire company. We will do these, the people do these kinds of frauds. So like what? Suppose we sold goods on credit to one customer for 1 lakh. The customer came and paid 1 lakh cash. But I will record in books of accounts as customer paid only 98,000. He asked for 2,000 discount. I gave 2,000 discount. My owner also says, okay, it's okay. He recovered no at least. But 2,000 fraud I did. Able to understand. Writing off as bad debt in respect of cash which is already received. Some small amount is there from one customer, 10,000 we have to receive. He is not responding. He is not responding. That's what I'll tell the owner. But actually he responded, paid also. But I will write it off as bad debt. So all these are various frauds. Remember, in big companies and all, shareholders are not in the company. First of all, understand. 50% ownership in a company is not by shareholders. See how important audit, how important this audit function should work, how honestly auditors should work. I'll tell you a simple example. Reliance Industries Limited is having how many crores turnover? Approximately 5 lakh crore turnover. They are having a profit of 30,000 crore plus. 30,000 crore plus. Getting it? In this entire company, approximately 50% ownership is by you and me, general public. Getting the point? Which means 50% of the company assets are owned by not Ambani and his family. But see, it is not discovered anything, but what kind of authority they have used, you can check it out. Suppose company has to purchase oil from outside the country, crude. They need to purchase and refine it. Now, they can enter into a transaction with the other person. Every year, let us assume company is purchasing approximately some gallons of oil. Getting it? Barrels. So many barrels there. One barrel is equal to 100 liters. Getting it? Suppose company is purchasing every year approximately 1 crore barrels oil. In respect of each barrel, please increase the price by 100 rupees. Enough. Suppose the company had entered into a contract with a person who is there from somewhere, Russia or some other person. Yes or no? Just increase by 100 and send that oil to the company. We will approve it. So, we paid 100 rupees extra per barrel. 1 crore into 100 crore profit I got there. Just because I am a director in a company. Able to understand? You think corruption is high in the government? No. That's very small compared to this kind of activity. In big listed companies, all this happens. Auditors, that's why we have to be very careful. Of course, even you try to discover all this, it's impossible because you are given 1 crore audit fee in a very big company. Getting it? It's impossible for you. So, now what this person will get? Sir, now how he will receive this 100 crores? Sir, he will not receive, man. He will tell the other party from Russia, buy that property in Russia. Buy that property in other country. Binami. He'll create binamis everywhere. Able to understand? So this is how it happens. I'm just giving a small example of fraud they can do. 100 crore is a very small fraud in big companies. It's a very small fraud, petty fraud. Imagine what kind of big level frauds will happen in companies. Are you getting it? Now, why auditors has to be very careful? Now you understand? You're doing, it's not an ordinary job. See, in private companies and all, it's okay because people are owners only managing the business. But in public companies, listed companies, owners are not managing the business. Getting it? Owners are away from the business. Shareholders are away. Able to understand? There are somebody who is managing the business and see what kind of, you need to look at their intention. You need to look at their, transparency. Now, companies, they adopt tenders. They adopt a tender mechanism. We see tenders, whether company have fixed vendor by using tenders or not. We will see that control. Only lowest tender company has to select. But with every other supplier, they'll have a contract. Whoever is quoting tender, please quote for 100 rupees higher. That's it. With everybody, they'll have a issue. So many frauds they can do. Understood? Not only in government, in every enterprise, these frauds happens, especially wherever others' money is involved. Getting it? They will also have their point of defense here. Why are you doing fraud? You are getting decent money. No. They'll have an argument. I am the one who is bringing the business here. They'll have an argument. Honestly speaking, directors are the one who are doing the business, correct? They are the one who are doing the business and distributing profits to all the shareholders, creating wealth. So, when we are creating lakhs of crores of wealth, it's okay to eat hundreds of crores. That's what their defense. Getting it? Next. When you are going for public issue, when the company is listed, when you have access to large amounts of public funds, you are not only having authority, you are having so many opportunities. Think of it. So how many ways the people can do fraud. Next. So these are all risk factors, right? These are all risk factors. So what are fraud risk factors? The fraud risk factors are pressures, opportunities and attitudes. It may be a pressure or it may be an incentive, motivation to commit a fraud. Next. Now, for misappropriation of asset, what kind of opportunities I have? What kind of opportunities? I am dealing with large amount of cash. It's an opportunity to commit fraud easily. Or I am dealing with inventory which are small in size, high value, high demand. I am working in jewelry shop. Able to understand? I am having easily convertible assets. I am a stamp vendor. Fixed assets which are small in size, marketable, lacking observable identification of ownership. This water bottle you take. Is there any ownership mark on this? By looking at this, this bottle is owned by Harsha sir. Can you say that? This is one which is lacking observable identification of ownership. So, on almost the assets that we see, they will not have any title deeds. They will not have any title recognition criteria. Suppose if there is a land, there is a title number. Title deed is there. Mobile's IMEI number is there. Some items we will have some ownership recognition criteria. But many assets will not have. Able to understand. Employee attitude. The person who is committing misappropriation of asset will have these kinds of attitude. He is having no commitment for monitoring. Misappropriation. The person do not have that commitment to monitor this. He disregard. Means, disobeyed the controls. He is having dissatisfaction with the entity. I am a purchase manager working from so long years. Company is not giving me increment. Let them not give. I will approve one vendor. I will get lifetime money in one contract. Able to understand? Sudden changes in behavior or lifestyle. If an employee has suddenly changed in lifestyle, if a person has sudden change in lifestyle, either he might have won lottery or he might have done fraud. Getting it? Next. Tolerance for petty theft. In an organization, small thefts are happening and the management is also tolerating it. This attitude shows me a risk. It's a risk that in this company there is a possibility of frauds. Able to understand. All this I do in risk assessment. We have to check all these points in risk assessment. Are you getting it? Next. Personal financial obligation for an employee which is creating pressures. Why employees again they do fraud, no pressure. What creates pressure on them is future layoff. Yesterday in Wipro 300 employees were fired because of moonlighting. Moonlighting means nothing but like working in more than one company without employer consent. Generally the companies whenever they are giving you employment opportunity, there is an implied condition, express condition as well in the employee terms and conditions that he should not work anywhere. But after this work from home, since I'm working from home, who knows where I'm working? So I applied for another job. Wipro also appointed me, Infosys appointed me, TCS. There are some people who work for 3 companies simultaneously. They'll have 3 laptops. Getting 2 laptops they'll have. Or they'll have only 1 laptop, 3 windows they'll open, 3 companies they'll be logging in. Able to understand? Now, when the Infosys manager called me, are you working? Sir, I'm on the laptop only. Can I switch on the camera? Yeah, you see. Yeah, I'm working, sir. Same will respond to TCS, same will respond to Wipro. And he's getting salary from all the three and not working for any of the three. Honestly, correct? Huh? So, these kinds of employees were recently discovered by Wipro and then fired off. So, changes to employee compensation and benefit plans. Suddenly, employees were given no increments. In fact, whatever salary they are getting, they decreased it. Compensation, promotions are not expected, not as per the expectation. You might have seen in movies, no? Hero, suddenly his friend will be their best friend or his PA. Yes or no? Somewhere out of accidentally, this hero would have missed him. And this fellow is the ultimate villain in the company. You might have seen these kinds of situations. Next. So these are the opportunities, pressures and attitudes for committing theft, misappropriation of asset. Now, for fraudulent financial reporting, the pressures, opportunities and attitude is again different. In exam, you will get an MCQ. Which of the following is not a pressure for conducting fraudulent financial reporting? They'll give you 3 pressure points relating to misappropriation of asset, or 3 points relating to this. They'll give 1 misappropriation of asset related point they'll give you. You need to pick that one. So you need to have clarity. Is this a pressure which makes employee to commit manipulation of records, or is it a pressure that makes him to steal the company goods, steal the company property? So you need to figure out clearly. When you're reading it, understand in that way. Are you getting the point? Now, companies facing huge competition, high vulnerability to changes, decline in customer demand, operating losses, negative cash flows, new regulatory norms. Because of all this, I felt very pressurized and I will manipulate accounting records. Are you getting a huge competition? My company is not being recognized. My efforts are not being recognized. I'll do frauds. Next, opportunity. How can I manipulate records? Through related party transactions. Through accounting estimates, through complex transactions, or by operating in tax haven jurisdiction in order to save taxation, tax payments. Getting the point? Attitude. How do you find management is having an attitude of manipulation of records? See in the past history. Did they violated with any of these norms? Check it out. Management is showing too much interest that profit should be higher. That itself is a risk factor. That itself is an indicator that management want to do a fraud. Management, they know some deficiency in internal control, but they fail to put a remedy. So management is intentionally, taking it easy. The internal controls and weaknesses. They are employing inappropriate means for reducing earnings for tax motivated reasons. Here, this point has been asked for 4 marks in past. The relationship between management and the predecessor auditor is strained as exhibited. What factors exhibit that the relationship between management and the auditor may be current auditor or predecessor auditor, the relationship is strained, means affected? What factors? How do you find? Frequent disputes with the auditor. Unreasonable demand on the auditor, like unrealistic time. Sir, last year auditor completed audit in 15 days. Why are you taking 25-30 days? Restrictions on auditor that inappropriate limit access to people. Sir, don't disturb them, they are working. If you want to come audit after 1 week. So management, whatever I'm trying to do, they are continuously finding fault with my work. Management domineering behavior, domination. So all these points reflect that there is a dispute, or the relationship between management and auditor has been strained. Are you getting the point? Next. Now, sometimes inadequate internal control over the assets. On the assets, controls were not adequate. This increases the susceptibility, means possibility of misappropriation. Can you please explain what are that kind of inadequate internal control examples? Inadequate segregation of duties. What is inadequate segregation of duties? You go Saravana stores. The person who is billing, the person who is taking money, the person who is packing the goods are different. Correct? The first, as soon as you took articles and go to the billing counter, first one person will check all the articles and scan it. then that entire basket will move to the another person. He will once again check the bill entire items and will go to the another person. He'll give you token, you have to pay money, and the another person will put it in the cover and then close that cover and then give you. Only at the exit gate, security guard will cut that cover. Yes or no? Have you seen that? The tag will be there, so that you can't open the bag inside the store. Why you should not open inside the store? So that you will not put another article. Are you getting the point? So, why this kind of segregation of duty was there? Why this kind of segregation of duty? If at all 3-4 persons together separately employed, fraud will happen only if all 4 of them collude. Now you may say, sir, all 4 of them can easily collude. No. These 4 of them were meeting today only. How can they do fraud? Why? Because they are rotated. They are rotated frequently. Rotation of duties. So inadequate segregation of duties. Getting it? Inadequate oversight of the top management expenditure, especially senior management expenditure. No proper, nobody will question them. That itself is a risk factor. Records are not adequately keeping. Physical safeguards over assets. Security systems were not there. Cameras were not there. And lack of timely and proper documentation of transactions. On time, we are not recording every transaction properly. We are just recording sales, but we are not reconciling. We are not physically verifying the stock. These are all various inadequate controls over assets, due to which the possibility of misappropriation of assets will increase. Able to understand? This question also asked in the last 3 exams. Some 4 marks it was asked. Able to understand? This is a very simple chapter. 5 marks question is guaranteed. 4 to 6 marks question is guaranteed. See how easy the chapter is? Yes or no? Now, under what circumstances you feel that there is a fraud? What circumstances indicate that there might be a fraud? See, before we have seen risk factors for fraudulent financial reporting, risk factors for misappropriation. That is before you start the audit. That they are the indicators, risk factors. You started the audit, you are doing the audit, suddenly you discover the following situations. That is an indication that some fraud might have happened. When you find this kind of circumstance, what do? You investigate further. You do additional audit procedure to resolve the matter. Suppose if you discover a fraud, it's a fraud. Discrepancies in accounting records. One of the restrictions, one of the indicators is what? Accounting records are not matching. Management is having pressure, but there is no guarantee that they will manipulate accounting records. Correct? Suppose management is having pressure, it's a risk factor. Definitely there is a possibility of fraud. But do you think they will definitely do a fraud? But when I find ultimately accounting records are not matching, can I say there is a fraud? Possibility, yes or no? I will be more alert on this. Like transactions are not recorded in complete, unauthorized transactions, last minute adjustments, auditor received some tips, complaints. Able to understand? He got some clue from an employee that some fraud might have happened. Evidences are missing. Evidences are conflicting. Ledger account shows 10 lakhs. Debtor confirmed me 8 lakhs. Both are not matching. Possibility of fraud. Maybe fraud, maybe there, may not be there, but there is a possibility of fraud. So they will give you a question on this itself. What are the circumstances which indicate possibility of fraud in case of missing evidences or conflicting evidences? 4 marks. You have to write any 4 points on this. Able to understand? Missing documents, documents were altered, unexplained items, discrepancies between records and confirmation replies, large number of credit entries in trade receivable, debtor's account, only one credit entry, payment or bad debt. There is no other entry in the debtor's account, yes or no? Missing inventory, physical assets of huge amount. Now, problematic, unusual relationship between auditor and management is also a possibility, is also an indicator of possibility of fraud. We have seen in the previous topic also. Management and auditor relationship is strained. That's a risk factor. Same way, if there is a problematic and unusual relationship between the auditor, this is also a fraud. Same points were given in a different meaning. Like denial of access to records, vendors, people, pressure on the auditor to complete the audit, delay in providing requested information. We are not willing to facilitate for electronic access. We are not willing the auditor. We are not willing to permit the auditor to talk to IT people. All these factors are indicators that there might be a possibility of fraud. Understood? And there are other reasons as well. Just you can see that later. Now, what is the duty of the auditor to report about fraud in Caro? In Caro we have totally 3 parts. In Caro we have totally 3 parts. What are the 3 parts that we have to report? First part, whether any frauds on the company, whether any frauds by the company were noticed or reported during the year. These are the frauds which are identified already by the company. Take a list of it, report it. Second point, have you filed ADT4 form with the government? If so, just comment here. Third point, company received whistleblower complaints, right? What is whistleblower complaint? Many are asking me this now. What is whistleblower complaint? See, every company will create a whistle mechanism. What is whistle mechanism? Suppose in the class I announced specifically, if you have any issues, please, there is a box there, write your complaint and then put it in the box. That's called whistle mechanism. In company, they'll not create box, they'll have some other way. Okay. Now, whatever complaints you filed, I need to take that complaints, read and then design my audit accordingly. Able to understand? This is called whistleblower mechanism. This policy, procedure is called whistleblower policy. Able to understand? Whether the company has implemented proper whistleblower mechanism and policy. If so, whatever complaints received, have you considered when you are planning your nature, timing, extent of audit procedures? That is what Caro is asking. So what auditor has to do here? How auditor will do here regarding while reporting under Caro? First, auditor will tell the team, my audit team members, that we need to report about frauds and all. Then I need to ask management, is there any frauds noticed? I will check internal audit report. I will check minutes of audit committee. I will take a representation from management regarding what are all the frauds happened. They gave a list. Other than this, there are no frauds. Management said no. Give a declaration. Getting it? And remember, management is responsible for correcting misstatements. Yes or no? Whenever there is a misstatement, they need to correct. Suppose if they have not corrected something. When I asked him, why are you not correcting these mistakes? They said that they're immaterial, sir. Not required. I am also convinced. But I will take a representation that uncorrected misstatements are immaterial. Give me a declaration. Uncorrected means what? I discovered the mistake. But that was not yet corrected. That's uncorrected misstatement. Understood or not? That is uncorrected misstatement. Next, manner of reporting. Same point, Caro point is reported here. Remember, you will only report in Caro or everything only identified frauds. Even when you are reporting to central government also, only identified frauds you will report, not suspected fraud. Now, suppose if you came across a situation that you are unable to continue with the audit. Exceptionally, you came across a situation where you felt you cannot continue with the audit anymore. There are so many manipulations. Companies not at all willing me to do audit. They are putting undue time pressure on me to complete the audit. In an exceptional circumstances, auditor came to a conclusion that I am unable to continue. First, look at your professional legal responsibilities, including is there any requirement to report to a person who made appointment regarding your withdrawal. Suppose if withdrawal is possible, withdraw. If auditor withdraws, communicate with top management. And if there is any legal requirement, communicate with the C&AG, government, ROC also. Then in case of company, examples they have given, report to company officers, file with ROC, C&AG in case of government company, and RPA in case of banks. Understood? So when auditor is, this question itself they can ask you. The auditor came across a situation where he is unable to continue the engagement. What should be the course of action? 4 marks question. You need to write the below answer. Able to understand all of you? That's it. Fraud chapter is completed. Understood thoroughly? All the topics we have covered. Getting it? Now you have to read thoroughly this topic. Getting it? Next we'll start with sampling.